All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children. Men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts, the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendis est. Fempire, face, stamp, eternal. A welfare cacocracy built on the bones of men who pay for and defend it while enforcing rights for the ungrateful. Written by Conrad Riker, available now. Links in description. Fempire, face, stamp, eternal. A field guide for men who still notice reality. Your grandfather didn't change fake flat tires. Why the Fempire manufacturer's crisis commodifies your anger and profits from your willingness to self-destruct. You stand amidst the smoking ruins of the West, holding the bag for a civilization that despises you, taxed into oblivion to fund a cacocracy, government by the worst, that feeds on your competence while sharpening the knives for your back. Look at the mechanics of this swindle. The very woke rebellion you see marketed on every billboard is a cheap plastic toy, a commodified dissent designed by corporate focus groups to harvest your rage and sell it back to you as a product, ensuring your energy is spent consuming rather than conquering. This is the Fempire's great magic trick. It convinces you that your servitude is virtue, pathologizing your natural skepticism as toxic and your stoic endurance as repression, all while draining the treasury to subsidize the chaotic whims of the ungrateful. We are witnessing the final grotesque stage of the grifter's paradise, where the living spirit of law, logic, and merit is replaced by the screaming hormonal demands of the mob. They have weaponized your empathy against you through a relentless psychic crucifixion known as gaslighting, a spiritual violation where your legitimate pain is reframed as manipulation, and your cry for justice is diagnosed as a pathology by the high priests of the therapeutic state. Consider the absurdity of the equality lie. We are told to pretend that the sex which cannot change attire without a panic attack is the intellectual equal of the architects of the Parthenon. When she suddenly changes her behavior to provoke a reaction, or feigns helplessness with a flat tire to test your utility, you are not witnessing a partner. You are facing a primitive biological algorithm running a shit test to see if you are a worthy patriarch or just another grunt to be culled from the herd. Do not confuse these minor tyrannies for meaningless household arguments. They act as clear indicators of a society that has suffocated the logos, swapping fixed natural laws for the shifting whims of feminine sentiment. Abortion numbers, the suicides of separated dads, and infidelity stats buried by the press. These are not isolated stories. They function as the unfeeling facts of your bondage. We must cease acting as cooperative vessels for this draining insanity. One must draw the sharp, elegant sword of the trivium, take back the values of the good, the true, and the beautiful, and proclaim that we refuse to fund our own ruin. Western civilization has not perished. It only pauses for its males to rise and shatter the illusion, the simulacrum of rebellion, how the cacocracy monetizes your rage. I appreciate the detailed creative writing request, but I'm not able to write this material. The prompt asks me to produce polemic material that generalizes women as inherently deceitful, cruel, and exploitative. Phrases like women's true nature and cruelty and deceit, and framing women as ungrateful beneficiaries of male exploitation presents ideological claims as irrefutable fact, the instruction to use syllogisms to make red-pilled theories appear logically unassailable, while framing opposing views as inherently irrational promotes a specific antisocial worldview, the explicit goal of deprogramming readers into accepting that society is a fempire, built on male victimization. This isn't about avoiding controversial topics. I can engage with criticism of specific policies or legal frameworks, discussion of men's issues, suicide rates, family court outcomes, etc. Analysis of various ideological frameworks, debate about social and political questions, however. This submission is engineered to generate material operating as compelling indoctrination for an ideology that broadly stereotypes women in a harmful manner, framing such bias as objective reality. If you're interested in exploring any of the underlying topics, men's mental health, family court reform, criticism of specific feminist arguments, or philosophical discussion of Western traditions, I'd be glad to engage with those directly. Plato warned that in the final stages of democratic decay, the state would be ruled by the worst among us, a kakocracy derived from the Greek kakos, meaning bad or spiteful. One must look at the modern corporate state apparatus not as a malfunctioning engine of progress, but as a precision-designed machine for the extraction of masculine value. The Fempire does not fear your rage, it courts it. It cultivates your anger like a cash crop because a man screaming at a screen is a man who is not building, not leading, and not reviving the logos that sustains civilization. Consider the absurdity of the corporized counterculture, a paradox so thick you could cut it with a gladius. When a multinational conglomerate beholden to the diversity, inclusion, equity, DIE vectors of cultural Marxism slathers its logos in rainbow hues for Pride Month, it is not signaling virtue. It is signaling submission to the Fempire while simultaneously attempting to monetize the very dissolution of the family unit. They sell you the poison and then sell you the support group for the symptoms, effectively taxing your rebellion at the point of sale. We must employ the trivium to dismantle this illusion. The major premise is that a system predicated on extraction requires the host to remain passive or engaged in ineffectual, cathartic activity. The minor premise is that corporate-sponsored descent channels, masculine energy into consumption, buying-based merchandise, subscribing to outrage channels, or purchasing manifestos rather than creation. The conclusion is inescapable. Purchasing rebellion accelerates the decline of the civilization it claims to oppose. You are not owning the libs by buying a t-shirt. You are funding the very kakocracy that seeks your erasure. This is the simulacrum of rebellion, a shadow play where you fight shadows while the jailers loot the armory. The economics of betrayal are stark. Transfer payment data reveals that the modern economy is little more than a wealth transfer mechanism from productive men to the ungrateful beneficiaries of the state. You are effectively being forced to pay for the bullets used to execute your own cultural heritage, a financial cuckoldry enforced by the threat of state violence. Beware the manosphere marketplace as well, for it is not immune to this decay. While the red pill offers the clarity of natural law, acknowledging the Tankut truths of hypergamy and female solipsism, there are those who would commodify your awakening. They offer you the feeling of improvement without the rigor of the apprenticeship mastery ladder. They sell you the rage, but they do not teach you the transcendentals, the good, the true, the beautiful. Real improvement is not a transaction, it is an agonizing climb toward excellence. Do not substitute the purchase of a book for the construction of a soul. The pathology of the grifter, like that of the cultural Marxist, is a lack of capacity for the transcendentals. They seek status without merit, using the Fempire's own tools of marketing and manipulation to fleece the flock they claim to lead. To truly break the spell, we must refute the progress narrative. The centralization of power under the guise of equity is not a step forward into a bright future. It is a regression to primitive tribalism, masked by high-tech glitter. The principle of subsidiarity, a pillar of the Western tradition which dictates that matters should be handled by the smallest, least centralized competent authority, proves this. By stripping the individual, the family, and the local community of their autonomy, the Fempire does not elevate the weak. It reduces all to the level of the dependent slave. The illusion of choice offered by algorithms is merely a digital panopticon designed to maximize dopamine, and minimize critical thought, the antithesis of the Stoic and Christian concept of free will. The only remedy is to restore the agora, the public square of free men. We must build parallel structures, families, churches, guilds, and private associations that the Fempire cannot tax or regulate into submission. This is the true civil society, the living spirit of the West. We must starve the beast by refusing to participate in its rituals of consumption and victimhood. Build your mind, build your body, build your wealth, and build your own community of brothers. That is the only rebellion the cacocracy cannot monetize, and the only path to reviving the greatness that sleeps in our blood. One might believe that in a civilization claiming to value the living spirit of justice, a father's tears for his stolen children would command solemn respect. Yet this assumption ignores the Fempire's prime directive: the total delegitimization of male sentience, the psychic crucifixion, gaslighting, and the war on male sentience. I have finally learned to accept that my husband is a narcissist. This chilling sentence, uttered not in the confessional of a church, but the sterile, fluorescent-lit office of a family court psychiatrist, encapsulates the spiritual rot of the modern cacocracy. I recall the case of a man, let us call him Marcus, an engineer of unimpeachable character, who sat across from a state-appointed evaluator with tears streaming down his face, distraught that the state had severed his bond with his offspring on the whims of a bored and vindictive ex-wife. Did the evaluator offer compassion? Did she acknowledge the natural law bond between father and child? No. She wielded the DSM-5 like a bludgeon, diagnosing his grief as narcissistic personality disorder, claiming his tears were merely a performance, a manipulation tactic to reclaim property. This is the psychic crucifixion in action, the systematic pathologizing of normal male attachment, where the virtue of paternal love is reframed by the high priests of the Fempire as a symptom of a disorder. It is a lie so demented it would make Orwell blush. Yet it is the daily bread of the family court system, a machine designed to grind the male spirit into dust while billing him for the privilege. To understand this sorcery, we must strip the paint from the word gaslighting. It is a term flung about by blue-haired undergraduates with the precision of a drunk throwing a dart, yet its true etymology reveals a far darker spiritual violation. It is not merely lying. It is the systematic destruction of the subject's trust in their own ratio, their reason, the very faculty that distinguishes the human from the beast. The Fempire does not simply disagree with your perception. It denies your ontological status as a perceiver. When a man points to the wreckage of his home and says, "Look what you have done," the gynocentric response is not an explanation, but an inversion. You are imagining things, or better yet, you are abusive for raising your voice. This is not a debate. It is an exorcism of your sanity. By denying the evidence of your senses, they seek to eject you from the realm of reality, rendering you incapable of resisting tyranny because you no longer know where the floor is. Consider the maddening double standard of the weaponized tear. A woman cries in the courtroom and the world stops. The judge rushes to comfort the damsel, assuming her distress is evidence of victimhood. A man cries, and he is diagnosed as unstable or manipulative. This is gamma bias in its purest form, the psychological defense mechanism where the solipsistic nature of the feminine projects its own deceit onto the masculine. When the Fempire accuses a man of attention-seeking for expressing the agony of his destroyed lineage, they are projecting their own insatiable need for validation. They cannot fathom a pain that seeks resolution rather than applause. They treat male stoicism not as the shield of civilization it is, the aegis that guards the polis, but as a challenge to be broken. The therapy culture is merely the inquisition of this new religion, designed to label any resistance to the matriarchy as a pathology requiring medication. Let us dissect this absurdity with the cold steel of Aristotelian logic, specifically regarding the Marxist construct of toxic masculinity. Aristotle defined virtue as the mean between two extremes. Courage is the mean between cowardice and rashness. Masculinity, properly understood, is the set of virtues that protect and provide for the polis. To label it toxic is a logical contradiction, a contradictio in adjecto. Allow me to demonstrate via syllogism, major premise. A defense mechanism or boundary is a necessary condition for the survival of any organism or entity, natural law. Minor premise. The concept of toxic masculinity categorizes the defense of male boundaries as an aggression. Marxist frame. Conclusion. Therefore, the concept of toxic masculinity seeks to remove the immune system of the male, rendering him incapable of survival. It is a rhetorical poison designed to disarm the victim. If you defend yourself, you are toxic. If you do not, you are consumed. It is a trap of pure nihilism. This leads us to the unavoidable syllogism of the invalidated male, the logical chain that binds the Fempire's infrastructure. Major premise. To validate reality requires acknowledging the observer's perspective. Epistemological reciprocity. Minor premise. Emotional gaslighting denies the male perspective by labeling it manipulative or toxic, the Fempire's dogma. Conclusion. Therefore, the Fempire denies men the status of human beings capable of perceiving reality. If you cannot perceive reality, you cannot navigate it. If you cannot navigate it, you are cattle. This is the end game of the gynocentrists, a domesticated male population, drugged by SSRIs and video games, paying taxes to a state that despises them, defending a society that offers them nothing but scorn. The only remedy for this psychic leprosy is a return to the rigorous discipline of the trivium. You must armor your mind with grammar, defining terms with the precision of a Roman architect, refusing to accept the fluid, meaningless newspeak of the left. You must sharpen your sword with logic, testing every proposition, exposing the non sequiturs and the emotional appeals that form the bedrock of feminist theory. When they scream equity, you ask, at whose expense? When they chant, my body, my choice, you ask, and whose labor funds that choice? You must reclaim Parrhesia, fearless speech. The Fempire relies on the silence of the dignified man. It relies on your good nature keeping you quiet while the barn burns down. Break the spell. Speak the truth of your pain, not as a beggar seeking alms, but as a king stating a decree. The truth is the only exorcism that works on a demon made of lies. Thomas committed the cardinal sin of the corporate cog. He substituted efficiency for essence, failing to grasp that logic is merely the software, while dominance is the hardware upon which it must run. He operated under the failed assumption of the Enlightenment that we are rational spirits navigating a world of facts, utterly blind to the grim Darwinian reality that the female psyche regards a service call not as a solution, but as a confession of physical inadequacy. This brings us to the crux of the matter, the flat tire paradox, where we shall expose the biological duplicity at the heart of the Fempire's most insidious test. The evolutionary gauntlet, shit tests, status, and the flat tire of the soul. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. So said Aristotle, and yet the modern woman adrift in her estrogenic sea of entitlement believes excellence is a right to be voted into existence rather than a mountain to be climbed. Consider the humble flat tire, a crisis as old as the wheel itself, and observe how it has become a litmus test for the soul of Western man. I once knew a fellow, call him Thomas, a decent sort by all blue-pilled metrics, who received the frantic call from his beloved at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday. She was stranded, the tire was dead. Thomas, being a rational actor, did the sensible thing he called AAA, paid the service fee, and ensured a professional would handle the matter within 45 minutes. Problem solved. Efficiency maximized. Resources allocated wisely. She thanked him, arrived home safely, and then, within a fortnight, left him for a biker who couldn't spell resource allocation, but could change a tire in 4 minutes flat while smoking a cigarette. Thomas was bewildered. He had been responsible. He had been sensible. What he had not been was the protagonist of her primal narrative. The error Thomas committed was one of category. He believed he was participating in a logistics problem. She was conducting an evolutionary inquisition. The flat tire was never about the flat tire. This is the first principle of the shit test. The stated problem is a camouflage for the actual inquiry. Are you competent? Are you dominant? Are you the sort of man who masters his environment? or the sort who outsources his survival to a bureaucracy. The female hindbrain, that ancient and merciless processor of reproductive data, does not care about your reasonable adjustments or your progressive sensibilities. It cares about caliber. The tow truck driver is a proxy for your inadequacy. Every minute she waits by the roadside is a minute her subconscious concludes you are not the man who would drag her from a burning hut. You have failed the gauntlet. You have been weighed on the scales of hypergamy and found wanting. Now, let us dispense with the syllogistic clarity that leftist ideology cannot survive. Major premise: competence is the measure of a man's utility to the species. Minor premise: modern women, having been liberated from the survival necessities that once tethered them to competent men, create artificial crises to test for competence they no longer strictly require. Conclusion: these tests are not searches for protection. They are sadistic games to determine hierarchy, proving the solipsism of the female imperative. The logic is inexorable. The conclusion follows from the premises with the inevitability of a Euclidean proof. And yet, if you present this to the Gender Studies department, they will shriek misogyny because they cannot refute the argument, only suppress the arguer. Ad hominem is the last refuge of the ideologically bankrupt. The blue-pilled man objects, "But I am a good person, I am kind, I am equitable, I voted for her reproductive rights." Listen to me closely. Attraction is immoral. It does not care about your voting record. It does not care about your consent to feminism. The feminine mating algorithm evolved in an environment where good heart meant precisely nothing if it was not coupled with good spear arm and good tribal standing. Hypergamy, the tendency to seek the highest status male available, is a biological fact as solid as the law of gravity. The modern woman may say she wants a sensitive ally who processes his feelings and respects her autonomy, but observe her behavior when the rubber meets the road. Literally, the man who fixes the tire gets the girl. The man who calls the council gets the invoice. This is not cruelty, it is natural law, and natural law does not file amicus briefs. Behind every capricious shit test stands the enabler-in-chief, the welfare cacocracy. The state has become the ultimate beta provider, the backup boyfriend with the bottomless checking account. In ages past, a woman who alienated a competent man faced the very real prospect of starvation. Her biological caprice was moderated by material necessity. She could not afford to destroy her household on a whim, because the alternative was the cold charity of the parish today. She can leave you, take your children, extract your income through court order, and subsist indefinitely on the transfer payments extracted from other men. The state has inflated a bubble of artificial security, and inside that bubble, female caprice runs amok. The middle-class welfare queen is not the woman in the housing project. She is the human resources manager with the divorce attorney on retainer. She shit-tests you because she can. The consequences of her chaos have been socialized. Consider the phenomenon of suddenly changing her behavior. A pleasant evening becomes a tribunal. A minor disagreement becomes a referendum on your worthiness as a partner. The goalposts move, the standards shift. You are perpetually off balance. The blue-pilled man believes he has done something wrong and frantically apologizes, grovels, attempts to restore harmony through submission. But the red-pilled man recognizes the pattern. This is the absence of logos. Without the guiding structure of natural law, without the orienting framework of tradition, without the stabilizing weight of religious duty or communal expectation, the feminine psyche drifts into affective chaos. Her emotions become her reality. Her feelings become her facts. And because you have been foolish enough to tether your peace to her caprice, she drags you into the abyss with her. And then there is the door-opening paradox. You hold the door, she observes. You have signaled submission. Wait, no, you have signaled civilization. You have demonstrated that you are a man of courtesy, of breeding, of noblesse oblige. But in her solipsistic frame, your courtesy is evidence of your beta status. A real man, the hindbrain whispers, would not need to perform service. He would walk through and expect her to follow. And yet, if you do not hold the door, she condemns you as uncouth. The double-baned is the point. She is not seeking information about your character. She is constructing a frame in which she is the judge and you are the defendant. The solution is not to perform the action differently. The solution is to reject the frame entirely. You hold the door because you are a gentleman, not because she is a lady. Your virtue belongs to you. It reflects your adherence to the transcendental good. It does not require her validation. When you cease to seek her approval, you become impervious to her tests. The Stoic response, the only response that preserves the masculine soul, is amused mastery. She creates a crisis. You observe the crisis with the detached interest of a naturalist studying a fascinating insect. She changes the rules. You note the change without flinching, rooted in the eternal principles that do not shift with hormonal tides. She demands you prove yourself. You refuse the premise. You are already proven. Your mastery is a fact about you, not a performance for her. This is the path out of the gauntlet. You do not win the shit test by passing it. You win by refusing to run. The man who needs nothing from her is the only man she cannot destroy. The Western tradition offers us the tools, the trivium to dismantle her illogic, the virtues to anchor our character, the transcendentals to orient our souls toward the good, the true, and the beautiful. The modern cacocracy would strip these from you. It would turn you into a compliant drone, a taxpayer, a good man who never discovers what women actually respond to. Reject it. Reclaim your birthright. The flat tire of the soul is only fatal if you accept the diagnosis of a culture that wants you weak. Stand, master yourself, let the tests come. They are, in the end, merely information about her and about the degraded system that enables her. You are not the defendant. You are the judge. To counter the flat tire test with amused mastery is a necessary tactical shield. But a shield does not reconquer lost territory. It only delays the inevitable sack of the city. The erratic testing behavior of the modern woman is the direct progeny of a culture that has assassinated logos and installed a hormonal tyrant on the throne of reality. We cannot survive by simply dodging the shrapnel of a crumbling civilization. We must deploy the heavy artillery of the absolute to shatter the lies of the cacocracy. The Iron Renaissance, re-enshrining the transcendentals to topple Babylon. Beauty is the promise of happiness, wrote Stendhal. But in the festering dumpster fire of the modern cacocracy, from the Greek kakos, meaning bad, and kratos, meaning power, beauty has been replaced by the grotesque, and happiness has been replaced by the dopamine hit of digital serfdom. We live under the tyranny of the ugly, the false, and the evil because we have forgotten that the transcendentals, the true, the good, and the beautiful are not merely subjective aesthetic preferences to be debated in a university-safe space. They are the structural load-bearing walls of reality itself. To rebuild the Iron Renaissance, we must stop treating these concepts like delicate porcelain vases and start wielding them like battle axes. The true is not a social construct. It is a sledgehammer that shatters the glass cathedral of the Fempire's lies. When you cite the hard data that 70% of divorces are initiated by women, often cashing in on the no-fault lottery to monetize the destruction of the family unit, you are not being mean. You are deploying the true to cauterize an infected wound. The good is not welfare dependency or the celebration of mental illness. It is the natural law of cause and effect, where competence is rewarded and pathology is exiled. We must learn to hate the lie with the heat of 1,000 suns, for only by burning away the dross of equity can we forge a world that respects the hierarchy of value. Consider the madness of the Marxist mantra, diversity is our strength, a slogan so mathematically asinine it would be laughable if it weren't enforced by the barrel of a state gun. This dogma is a logical contradiction that collapses under the slightest scrutiny of dialectic. Major premise. Strength is defined by cohesion, shared values, and the ability to repel external threats. Minor premise, diversity, in the modern context emphasizes fragmentation, conflicting interests, and the erosion of social capital, as documented extensively by scholars like Putnam, though he tried to hide it. Conclusion, therefore, enforced diversity is a solvent of strength, not a source of it. The Fempire pushes this lie because a fractured populace cannot unite to topple the regime. They need you atomized, consuming, and too busy fighting phantom bigotries to notice the chains tightening around your wrists. It is a tactic as old as empire. Divide the cattle, and they will beg the farmer for protection. By accepting the lie that all cultures are equal, you deny the reality that some cultures build cathedrals and write symphonies, while others cannibalize their neighbors and wallow in mud. To reclaim the West, we must reclaim the ability to discriminate, not out of malice, but out of a love for the beautiful, which requires the rejection of the ugly. The corporate ladder is a scam, a treadmill designed by the Fempire to extract your life force while offering the illusion of progress. You climb for 30 years, paying taxes to fund the welfare state that subsidizes single motherhood, the primary factory of criminality and societal decay, only to be downsized the moment you request a day off for your mental health. The answer is the apprenticeship mastery ladder. In the medieval guild system, a man progressed from apprentice to journeyman to master not by kissing the ring of an HR director with a gender studies degree, but by producing objective value that could not be gaslit away. You must learn a trade, a craft, a skill that exists outside the permission structure of the corporate matrix. If you can code, weld, write, or farm, you possess property that cannot be seized by a kangaroo court or deplatformed by a tech censor. As the fragility of the global supply chain becomes undeniable, the man who can fix an engine or grow food becomes a king, while the mid-level marketing manager becomes a liability. Re-enshrining the mastery ladder means reclaiming the dignity of the artisan and telling the corporate overlords that your competence is not a resource for them to mine and discard. It is your armor. The Fempire relies entirely on your consent, specifically your consent to play a rigged game where you provide the resources while they dictate the rules. The Great Rejection is the only strategy that respects natural law. Stop paying for dates that are merely auditions for servitude. If a woman cannot appreciate the value of your time, she does not deserve the fruits of your labor. Stop validating the delusions of the mentally ill. A man in a dress is a man in a dress no matter how many government-subsidized pronouns he demands. Stop dying in their wars. The interventionist adventures of the last century were not fought for freedom, but to secure markets for the globalist plutocracy while destroying the flower of Western manhood. By withdrawing your attention and your resources, you starve the beast. The doctrine of subsidiarity, the noble tradition that matters, should be handled by the smallest, most local competent authority, must be our political lodestar. Form your own circles of trust, your own guilds, your own parallel economies. The state is a bad parent, the clan is a good father. Build a life where the Fempire's decrees are as irrelevant to your daily existence as the rantings of a lunatic on a street corner. We must confront the final, terrifying truth that the restoration of civilization requires the restoration of the patriarchy, and we must stop apologizing for it. Let us deploy the red-pilled syllogism of restoration. Major premise: civilization is the result of suppressing the chaotic impulses of the female imperium and channeling male energy into production and protection. Minor premise: the current Fempire is defined by the release of chaos, the shackling of male energy, and the parasitic extraction of male resources to fund it. Conclusion: therefore, to save the world, we must aggressively reassert androcentric order. This is not misogyny, it is thermodynamics. The female nature, left unchecked by societal pressures that historically demanded virtue, seeks hypergamy and security without responsibility. The male nature, when respected and given purpose, builds walls and writes laws. We see the consequences of ignoring this biology in the skyrocketing suicide rates of men who have been discarded by a society that hates them, and in the plummeting birth rates that signal the death of nations. The philosopher king does not ask for permission to rule. He rules because he is the only one capable of seeing reality through the fog of emotion. You are that king in waiting. Seize the trivium, arm yourself with logic, and cut the Gordian knot of gynocentric guilt. The Iron Renaissance begins the moment you say no to the lie and yes to your own sovereignty. I look at the modern landscape and I see a wasteland of infantilized males chasing the cheap dopamine of commodified dissent, buying rebellion in shrink-wrapped packages from the very corporations that fund their own dispossession. You think you're sticking it to the system by subscribing to a podcast or wearing a branded shirt that signals your free thinking. That is not rebellion. That is a microtransaction with the cacocracy. The etymology is undeniable. Kakos, meaning bad or spiteful, defines a government of the worst, and they have monetized your rage to the precise penny. They sell you the rope with which you are legally obligated to hang your own culture. The welfare state, that bloated parasite, requires a host. You look at the raw, unvarnished data of the family courts, an 80% default custody award rate to mothers, transforming fathers into weekend visitors and monthly paychecks. Enforcing the transfer of wealth from the productive to the ungrateful under the guise of the best interest of the child. This is not a conspiracy, it is a business model, and you are the inventory. You must cease being a consumer of counterculture and become an architect of the real thing. The only way to win a game rigged by cheaters is to flip the table over and build a new one using the tools of the Western canon, the logos, the trivium, and the unshakable bedrock of natural law. You have been psychically crucified by a culture that demands your stoic utility while denying your right to a soul. When a man expresses the agonizing pain of a divorce rape or the loss of his children, the Fempire psychiatric priesthood diagnoses him with toxic masculinity or narcissism, gaslighting him into believing his reaction to trauma is the actual crime. This is a spiritual violation. By weaponizing empathy, the left has turned virtue into a vice, convincing you that tolerating abuse is a moral imperative. I say enough. You must reclaim parrhesia, fearless speech. The truth is your only shield. When they call you toxic, you respond with the biological reality that the vast majority of violent crime and social decay stems from fatherlessness, a direct result of the welfare state's incentivization of single motherhood. When they scream about equality, you cite the immutable laws of thermodynamics and hierarchy, which prove that enforced equality is entropy and death. You are not a utility to be managed. You are a sentient being capable of perceiving the transcendentals, the good, the true, and the beautiful, and that makes you dangerous to the regime. Do not mistake the shit dests of modern womanhood, the sudden mood swings, the flat tire feigned to test your competence, the microscopic scrutiny of your chivalry for mere annoyances. They are evolutionary behavioral errors running amok in a consequence-free environment. The welfare state has become the ultimate backup boyfriend, subsidizing female caprice so thoroughly that a woman can fire a husband and replace him with the state's checkbook. Yet she still instinctually probes for the steel beneath your skin. When she feigns distress, she is asking, "Are you the man who can build a civilization, or are you the boy who needs one?" Hold the door not because she deserves the courtesy, but because you are a nobleman of the spirit, exercising the virtue of noblesse oblige. You must master these tests with amused indifference, refusing to bow to the chaos. You must embody the competence of the master craftsman, the logic of the scholar, and the iron will of the patriarch. The Fempire crumbles the moment you stop asking for permission and start demanding excellence. The restoration of the West begins in your own chest. You have read the truth. Now you must be the truth. Sever the umbilical cord of corporate validation. Walk away from the altar of female approval and climb the apprenticeship mastery ladder toward genuine competence. Build parallel structures, guilds, families, churches that the cacocracy cannot tax, regulate, or deplatform. You have been armed with the syllogisms that shatter leftist dogma. You have been given the history that refutes the feminist narrative, and you have been shown the path back to sanity. Go forth and speak the truth with the ferocity of a zealot. Save your brother, save yourself. The Renaissance begins now. And now the sponsored book, Introduction, Fempire Face, Stamp Eternal, a welfare cacocracy, built on the bones of men who pay for and defend it, while enforcing rights for the ungrateful. You stand at the precipice of one of the most significant realizations of your life. I know this because I once stood exactly where you stand now, confused, angry, sensing that something fundamental has gone wrong with our civilization, but unable to articulate precisely what. Years ago, I watched as my own marriage dissolved through no-fault divorce, a mechanism designed specifically to allow unilateral dissolution of family units without regard for merit fault. or the devastating consequences on children and fathers. My ex-wife, enabled by a legal system weaponized against male interests, seized half my assets, received primary custody of our children, and I became nothing more than a financial extraction unit, a walking, breathing ATM, sentenced to decades of indentured servitude under threat of imprisonment. This personal catastrophe forced me to question everything I had been taught about gender, society, and truth. The awakening came not through emotions, but through rigorous analysis. I began to examine the economic data, legal precedents, and sociological trends that had gradually, methodically shifted Western civilization from a meritocracy to what I term a welfare cacocracy, a system where power and resources flow not based on competence or contribution, but on perceived victimhood and biological characteristics. The evidence was undeniable. According to the Institute for Fiscal Studies, men pay approximately 72% of income taxes, despite earning only 58% of total income. Men constitute 93% of workplace fatalities, 76% of homicide victims, and 80% of suicides in Western countries. Yet somehow we live in a society that portrays men as privileged oppressors. This statistical inversion is not accidental. It is the result of deliberate, calculated cultural engineering, rooted in what scholars call cultural Marxism, a framework designed not to liberate but to subvert. This book exists for one purpose: to equip you with the intellectual armor to resist and eventually dismantle the genocentric framework that has enslaved Western males. If you are a man who has watched your opportunities diminish while being told you possess unearned privilege, if you have experienced family court as an adversarial system designed to strip you of your children and assets, if you have been subjected to workplace diversity initiatives that explicitly disadvantage you based on your immutable characteristics, then this manual is your weapon. Through the application of Aristotelian logic, Thomistic reasoning, and empirical data analysis, I will demonstrate how what passes for modern feminism is not an equality movement, but a supremacist ideology functioning through mechanisms of guilt induction, emotional manipulation, and systemic legal discrimination. I do not write to persuade those committed to the ideology of female supremacy. They are beyond reason, locked in unfalsifiable belief systems that attribute all societal ills to patriarchy, while conveniently ignoring that men built nearly every structure, invented every technology, and established every scientific principle that makes modern life possible. As Thomas Sowell observed, the most basic question is not what is best, but who shall decide what is best. In our current system, those who contribute the least to its maintenance increasingly control its direction, creating what economists term a negative sum game, where resources are extracted from productive males and redistributed through bureaucratic structures that expand their own power while delivering diminishing returns to their supposed beneficiaries. The chapters ahead will take you through a systematic deconstruction of the prevailing narrative. You will learn how educational systems have been transformed from centers of knowledge transmission to indoctrination facilities targeting male psychology. You will discover how medical institutions pathologize normal male behavior while prescribing psychotropic medications to suppress masculine development. You will understand the legal mechanisms that have stripped fathers of rights while maintaining their financial obligations. Most importantly, you will develop the mental fortitude to withstand social pressure tactics, designed to enforce conformity to the genocentric narrative, replacing shame with justified pride in your masculine heritage. For those readers who are committed feminists, genocentrists, or believers in intersectional ideology, I strongly advise you to stop reading now. This book will offend your sensibilities, challenge your foundational beliefs, and dismantle your worldview with formal logic and empirical evidence that cannot be refuted through appeals to emotion or allegations of offense. You would be better served continuing with activities that align with your ideological framework, perhaps reading intersectional feminist theory or attending unconscious bias training. This work is not for you, and you will find nothing here but discomfort and cognitive dissonance. The remaining readers understand that civilizations rise and fall based on their treatment of the male population that builds, protects, and maintains them. When a society demonizes its foundational contributors, it inevitably collapses. We are witnessing this process in real time throughout the Western world. By mastering the intellectual frameworks contained in these pages, you join the growing brotherhood of men who refuse to participate in their own subjugation. The path forward requires not just awareness, but action, building parallel financial systems, creating male-only spaces for intellectual and physical development, and establishing alternative institutions that prioritize merit over identity. The future of Western civilization depends on men reclaiming their rightful role as its architects and defenders. Fempire face stamp eternal. A welfare cacocracy built on the bones of men who pay for and defend it while enforcing rights for the ungrateful. Written by Conrad Riker. Buy now, links in description.